I didn't intend to record this video, but events over the last 24 hours have kind of made me want to, and I never thought I'd be in this position. It's not anger, it's just disappointment and curiosity about how strange the world is. Because I've never really shopped for video games in the United States. I don't have an affiliation with GameStop personally, but I have 2 decades of talking to people on forums online and hearing them talk about their love-hate relationship between the video game console purchasing stock and this store, which has dominated the industry for years. And I want to just take a second to reflect upon the last week and how GameStop has something of an oddity in the market on 2021. Suddenly, at the end of January 2021, found itself the unlikely crux of a war between a lot of people and hedge fund investors on Wall Street. And I want to just say why this happened, how it happened, and not give you my take, because this isn't a personal take on this, but there are things that the mass media are not putting in their reports, in their search, and I get it, because I'm not going to say that mass media is biased. It's not bias. It's not because they're biased. It's because they don't want to be accused of being biased. And the stupid thing is, by doing this, they are leaving facts out, which makes people accuse them of being biased. But the people accusing them of being biased are not the people in power. And so therefore clearly less risky to be accused of being. I get that reporting the news is, particularly in the modern day, is a horrible political affair, and someone's going to call you biased. But you have to take a stand, and there's just things that have happened which I think people consider speculation, but the evidence is out there. And I'd just like to talk about how I perceive and why, not just stocks and shares, but why GameStop has become this cultural touchstone. And I've got here the stock market for GameStop pulled up from 2011 to 2016, and this is the period running up to, during, and then after the PS4 and the Xbox One console launch. Clearly, this console launch at the end of 2013 was a big moment for this industry, but the last big moment for GameStop, and people were getting excited about buying new video game hardware. Stocks went up massively from $20 to $55. This was investors going, right, GameStop's going to make a ton of money. Because the stock market is supposed to be about people buying stocks in companies that they like, that they have faith in, that they are convinced will make money. That gives that company capital that they can use to reinvest, and it makes it easier for the company to grow. And so people were investing in GameStop. GameStop used that money to be able to afford more PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones, to better be able to sell them to make more money that the investors then took back. And the trouble is, once they've made their money, the investors take it back. So the whole period from 2014 onwards, we've got this slow. It took a couple of years. The market's pretty good until 2016, but it's downwards. It goes down. Shares go down in price. Then they become cheaper and people buy them, so they go back up in price. And then they've made their money, so they sell them, so they go down in price. And I think that moment throughout 2013, we're actually seeing genuine investment. That is people going, we want to support good business and there's money to be made here. But after that point, 2014 to 2016, what we see there is a casino. It's people piling the money in, betting on whether it's going to go up or down. If it goes up, and then they sell, they make money. If it goes down, they sell, they lose money. So you have to hold on. Do you have faith it will come back up? Because there's no guarantee it will. Wall Street, the stock market, is a casino. There's no ifs and buts about it. There's a lot of people who talk about hedging their bets, a lot of people who talk about minimizing risk, a lot of people who talk about diversification, but it's gambling. And to pretend it's anything other than gambling is to be hypocritical and dishonest. Why am I getting angry about that? I'll come to what's happening in 2021 and how hypocritical it is for some people to accuse small investors of gambling. Because as if gambling is the most sinister thing you can do in the world. Gambling, and I'm afraid I wish I had the stocks for GameStop from pre-2011. I wish I could look back at the stock market crash from 2008, because I was unlucky enough to be job hunting in 2008. I was unlucky enough to be one of the people who graduated Basically, I'd spent my early life in education. I'd done the right thing. I'd got skills. And then you go out onto the job market and there just no one was hiring. And the reason no one was hiring is because the stock market had crashed. The stock market crashed, this big international crash, no money, no one could afford to invest. If no one can invest, they can't hire. If they can't hire, they can't create jobs. A vicious cycle. If people can't have jobs, they don't have money, they don't spend money. Therefore, no one has any jobs, no one has any money, and the stock market crashes further. And the whole way through this period, 2008, 2009, 2010, we were seeing the bankers whose greed, and to be fair, it's pretty conclusive at this point. It was greed on the standpoint of some rogue traders. I'm not casting the whole market banking sector as being a disgrace, but there were greedy people who were betting beyond their means, and their avarice brought the whole world, briefly, the Western world at least, um, caused disruption on a massive scale. Jobs lost, lives ruined, destroyed. And yeah, I'm part of that generation who was just entering. And yet within by 2010, there were more jobs, but there was also a 2 year backlog of people hunting for those jobs. And the whole period, 2010, 2011, 2012, the world was getting better. But there were more and more people graduating and entering the job market from that whole time who were then fighting with the 3 years of displaced people who were just essentially you're setting back a generation. And I think this is important because I wish I had the stocks for GameStop in this period. Maybe GameStop wasn't around then. I don't actually know. But yeah, we can look at this tremendous growth of the company in 2014. And then the trouble is, throughout the PS4 and the Xbox One gaming market, what we've seen is the slow move away from physical consoles, away from the physical game market. People now do a lot more shopping online. And in the movement to online sales, of course, GameStop's market's going to decrease. There's been a lot of movement from video game publishers actually to try and destroy the second-hand video game market. They were really, like in 2014, they were really trying to do their best to crush it out. So many games that, when a second person uses them and puts them in a console, they lose features, they lose the online passes. They've been moving towards saying, no, if you want to buy a game, you have to buy it first hand. Second hand will lose you equipment, and actually you're better off just buying online. To the point where the console launch in the end of 2020, there's an option to buy a PS5 that has no disc slot, which is crazy for me, but I get it. The world's moved on. I'm no longer the young generation. I'm no longer down with the kids. But yeah, this whole period, GameStop from 2014 down to 2019, it's just, people losing faith in it. It's a dying industry. It lost money in some years. It actually had some quite catastrophic losses. But we get to 2020 in the pandemic, and the pandemic was also a horrific year, and the stocks are at an all-time low of under $5. And something happened in 2020. A couple of things happened. GameStop, a quite well-known investor, apparently the creator of a brand called Chewy, which I've never heard of. I don't know who this guy is. He bought a lot of shares in GameStop and got elected to its board, put his own people in, and he started making big noise about how he's going to turn GameStop around. Now, you hear good news stories about this in businesses all the time. Of course, every business that's struggling will start to say things to try and build up its stock. But this good news story in 2020, it gave a little bit of a resurgence. And it caused some people on Reddit. There's a Reddit forum called wallstreetbets. And this is where people who trade in the stock market, they just talk about what they're doing. And it's not an advice forum. They do not make the mistake of saying Wall Street Bets an advice forum. It absolutely is not. But what it is full of savvy people who know what they're doing. Some of them know what they're doing. And telling you openly, this is what I'm doing. And they'll tell you the reason why they're doing it. And if you think their reasoning is sound, you are welcome to follow them. And they take some quite risky investments. They've been heavy proponents of Bitcoin throughout 2020. Well, that's another story. And some of them started looking at GameStop and they said, well, this is weird. The stocks are only $5, which is incredibly low. Like the business is struggling, but it's not struggling that much. This is so low. This is bankruptcy territory. This is GameStop going out of business. Are we really? Is the pandemic going to kill back GameStop? And a lot of people like GameStop. There's a lot of people like my age, but in America, who look at GameStop and go, yeah, I've got affection for it. A lot of people hate it for other reasons, but there are a lot of people out there who have affection for this old brand. And it's not the only old brand like this. You've got BlackBerry. They used to make mobile phones, and they were the big players before Apple and the smartphone. BlackBerry has dying. Nokia, old phone manufacturer, in a similar place. All these old companies, and started 2021. There's been a lot of soar of essentially they blame millennials of piling into legacy brands that we've got affection for, and maybe that's true. But the argument on Wall Street Bets, what they noticed was that there is an event which I'd never heard of before the last about 2 weeks ago called shorts. And the idea is if you believe that a company's stocks are going to go down, if you believe it's destined to fail, you find someone who has the stocks already and you borrow it off them. You sell the stocks, you pay them a very small commission to borrow because they don't give you the stocks for free. So there's not a transaction here, they still own the stocks, but you've borrowed it and you've sold on their behalf. That means you make the money from the sale. You sit on that money, put it in your bank account, get the interest, and sit and sit and sit and sit. But legally, they still own the stocks. So when they declare, right, I want those stocks back, you have to buy the stocks back and give it back to them. And if the stocks have gone down in price, what essentially you buy the number back. You don't buy the equivalent price, you buy the equivalent number. So if you bought 10 stocks and they were worth $10, that means you sold $100. And if they're now only worth $1 and you bought 10 and you sold 10, you now buy 10 and you give the $10 worth of stocks back to the original owner. This is a way for people in Wall Street to point at businesses when they, as I said before, businesses have good news stories all the time. They have stories where they want to say, yay, look at us, we're turning things around, we're going to make all the money in the world. Because of course, if they say good news, people will give them money, the stock price will go up and that helps them. So I've heard a lot of people say, no, shorts are important. Shorts are a really good way of controlling the stock market, of preventing people from just bragging their way to infinite wealth. If we didn't have shorts, then when stocks go down, it would just be loss of money for everyone. In this way, the wealth is just moved from place to place. I'm not a stock trader. I don't know what I think of this. It sounds complicated, but the more I think about it, the more I look into it. Fine, I get there's a role for shorts. But what happened with GameStop is that if, let's say, there are 10 million shares for GameStop, 140% of those 10 million shares, and I'm making the number 10 million, but 140% of those shares were shorted. That means there had been more shorts sold of GameStop than had ever existed in the first place, because what had happened is people said, I want to short GameStop, and they'd borrowed the shares and then sold them. And then someone else somewhere else had bought new shares, but these aren't new shares. These are the shares that have just been sold. And then they rebuy the shares which have already been recycled once and short them again. And this had happened multiple times. Over 140% of the business, the business doesn't really exist at this point. The shares are actually negative, although you can't see that because eventually they're going to have to buy them all back. But the thing about selling shares, when you borrow the shares and sell them, if you do this enough, the share price goes down because when people see shares being sold, the stocks go down. And so the price comes down because people are worried, oh, this business is losing money. And when you've done that 140% of the worth of the business, suddenly this downwards trend from 2017 to 2020, suddenly that doesn't look like a business failing anymore. That looks like a business that's being strangled by Wall Street. That looks like a business that a hedge fund manager has said, oh, I think it's going to be in trouble and I'm going to short it. But having seen that they can make money because it's going down naturally, and I'm not a stock trader, I don't know what I'm looking at, but this period in 2019, that's a sudden, very sharp downwards. Maybe I'm just being suspicious. But if you do that again and again, and you keep continuously selling the shorts, of course it's going to drive down. People are looking at a business that's continuously losing money, but it's not really losing money. What's happening is you are buying up shares. You are not buying up shares. You are just continuously forcing everyone else who has the shares to sell them, or you're selling them off on everyone else's behalf. And it's fake. It's a fake downwards trend because inevitably you're going to have to buy them all back. And that's fine for you because as long as the share price has gone down, you're not going to spend as much money as you got in the first place. Your quid's in the bank. And so the Reddit forum said, well, 140%, this is untenable. When these shares come due, when the original investor says, I want my stocks back, if the share price has gone up, somehow magically, if it goes up, then now the thing about stocks is you can't lose money on the stock market if you're careful. So if you spend $100 to buy $100 worth of stocks and they go up in price, you can walk away with $200. But if they go down in price, the worst that can happen to you is you lose your $100. You spend $100 on stocks and then nothing happens. They go down in price and they go to zero and you lose the stocks. But nothing worse can happen to you in the stock market. But with shorts, it's different. There's no cap. If the shares go down, then you can make as much money back as you bought in the first place. If you short a stock and it goes out of business, then you keep all of the money you bought in the first place. But if you short a stock and it goes up in price, you are legally required. You have a contract where you have to buy what you originally sold. And the fact that it costs 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more than you sold it for, well, this is why hedge fund companies have massive assets, and a lot of people say the stock market's purely for rich people because only they have the money in the bank to afford if it goes wrong. Because a lot of people, they say Wall Street's not gambling. Of course it's gambling, but it's gambling exclusively for people who can afford to make the heavy losses. Because when they win, that's great. They make money for themselves, and theoretically that's in the stock market, so it's good for all of us. But if they lose, well, it's fine. They've got so much money. They need to have all this money because if they didn't have all of the money in the world, then what would happen when they lose? And they inevitably will lose. Not everyone is making money all the time. Shares go up and down and you can't predict it. Now, they tell you it's not gambling, but of course it's gambling. And the shorts market, this idea of putting 140% of a company in the red because you are not content with just making some money off the company failing. You are driving out a business because everyone else is looking at those stocks going down and they're piling out. And the more the stocks go down, the more money you're making, and you keep shorting and you keep making money, and you're going to bankrupt this company. And you're not doing it because you think it's failing. You're doing it because you're greedy, because you're gambling. And the guys on Reddit, they saw this and they said, yeah, if the stocks go up though, when these shorts expire, they're going to have to buy them all back. And then the stocks will go up even more. And if they go back, because when the stocks are only $5, let's say they get to $60, $50, 10 times the original value, they've got to buy shares which are worth 10 times more. There's no upper ceiling on this. Theoretically, there's no upper ceiling. And here's the problem. It is illegal to give fraudulent stock market advice. There are strict laws on the way. The Reddit forum, it's not an advice forum. It's a shit posting forum. It's a short forum where people brag and boast about what they're doing, and some of them are kind enough to explain what they're doing, but it's not an advice forum. No one's giving financial advice. They're just saying, here's a thing. Do you think it's interesting? Because we think it's interesting, and we are prepared to take a stand on this. And so some very big investors, I say big individual sole traders who have money in the stock market. They're still individual people. They're still playing with their own money. They're not owned by a bank. They're not hired by other people. They're playing with their own cash. They're gambling. And as all we have heard recently, the people on Wall Street, they don't gamble, they invest. But these sole traders, these dirty gamblers, how dare they? These people on Reddit, they declared war and they started putting money in to the stock market and they invested in GME. And here we have start of 2021. I'm going to zoom in here. This is currently the trades at 1 week. We have the minimum, and then we have this period of October and the start of 2021. I'm going to have to zoom in more because 1 week is not enough to really show what's going on here. Here we have January 2021. First week of January 2021, not much happens, but here we have the 13th of January. It shoots up to over $20, and it goes from $20 to $35. It holds steady. We get to the 22nd. It's going up. It's going up to about $50. And here's around where I started paying attention to this because I've got a friend who is into stocks and shares. He's been telling me all year about cryptocurrency, and he was like, "I'm in on GameStop," and he started explaining to me. I was just like, "I don't understand any of this." The more I looked into it, the more perplexed I got. I said, "This doesn't make sense." I said, yeah, but the shorts, they're all due to expire at the end of January. These companies are going to be squeezed because they have to give the stocks back. The initial contract they had to borrow the stocks, it expires. Now, here's the thing. I've given you the history lesson like I know it's true, like I was a financial trader, an expert in the stock market. I'm absolutely not. but I've done my research, I've done my reading. The consensus is that this is what's happened. And the hedge fund, when the money went over $60 a share, the hedge fund that had done all this shorting, it was challenged. You have a lot of shorts on GameStop. Can you explain why you betted for the stock to go down? And this company, they tweeted that they were going to put out a video telling everyone why this increase in the GameStop stock was bogus, why it was fake, and why the stock was inevitably going to go down. And the thing is, the guys on Wall Street, they took this video, and the video was never actually released, but they took this announcement as essentially declaring war on them, because they had made a tactical decision that they thought there was money to be made here. And the guys in the Wall Street, the hedge fund managers, had seen what was happening and said, no, not only do we need this stock to be as small as possible, we're going to go on and tell everyone that it doesn't deserve to be. And yes, they're right. It doesn't deserve to be this high. The only reason it's this high is because people have seen that this company, and they're not the only company, several companies, had invested over 140% of the stock, of the shorts. This company had essentially overreached itself and made itself vulnerable. And when this company had made itself vulnerable, the guy and then put out a video telling everyone else that they didn't know what they were talking about and they should all just go home and stop pretending to be investors. The guys on Reddit absolutely went wild and said, no, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. We're in this. We like the stock. The rock and the memes, it just memes everywhere. Rocket to the moon. I said, there's no ceiling. The higher the price of the stocks when the shorts expire, the more money the company has to pile in to buy back the stocks that they are legally contractually obliged to buy. And the higher the stocks, the more they'll have to spend, because it's an exponential increase, a multiplication factor. And so you have to, yes, there is, it's not unusual for financial companies to release statements about what they expect to see in the market. But in this case, it's very hard to see how this statement, GameStop should only be $5 and here's why, can't be seen as anything more than a company trying to force the market into a shape that will make the company the most profit. This is blind arrogance and greed. And so Reddit memes everywhere, and you suddenly go from $40 up to $60, up to $70, and half an hour is not enough now. I've got to go up to the minute. So let's go back. Let's go back a week. Here we are. We're up to $100. And hands on the table, this is the point where I, out of moral obligation, having read the arguments on both sides from the Redditors and from the guys on Wall Street, decided I'm not a stock market trader. I've never traded in stocks in my life. But I think these guys on Reddit are sound. I think that they've done their maths. This isn't just, it's not financial advice. It's just people making observation. And I think they might be onto something. So I also thought about what argument they were putting forward about the evil of this company that was just blind arrogance and greed, and saying, no, remember 2008? You remember when everyone lost their money apart from the banks, because the banks were protected because they're too big to fail, because we depend on them. The government gave them a hell of a lot of money, and I still remember conversation 2009, 2010 about, do bankers deserve a bonus? And people saying, no, the bankers must get the bonus, because if we don't get bonus, the talent will leave and we need the talent to make money. And there's people out there on the streets struggling to pay for their houses, struggling to find jobs, going, why do they deserve a bonus when everyone knows it's the bankers that screwed the economy? It's their greed that did this. And suddenly you give this community of people who saw and lived through that experience, and you say, here's a banker who's been greedy, and if the stocks are over $60, he will have to pay, and the higher it is, the more he'll have to pay. And of course, suddenly the memes take off, and there's two types of memes. There's a lot of people just shouting to the moon, because the stocks go up. They go up to $100. I put $50 in, because I think the guys on Reddit are right. I don't know if it'll work. I don't care if I don't lose those $50. I think they've got an argument, and if this hedge fund capital guy has been greedy, screw him. That's all that matters. Who cares about $50? $50 is going to make bugger all difference on the stock market. But here we are. In the following week, I was rewarded. We're up to $100. We're up to 120. Up to 130. Up to 140. And we're at the close of play around $150 at 9 p.m. Just under $150. It sank just at the end. I think people trying to take the money because I think everyone was saying, well, we've got till the following Friday before the shorts are due. The squeeze isn't here yet. This is just people getting in on the craze. But it doesn't matter because the higher the money, the more the bankers will have to pay out. This suddenly becomes about punishment. The more money you put in, the more the greedy bankers will be punished. I've seen so many people on Reddit talking about how this is the little guy getting his own back on the banks. Now, it's not the banks. This is a tiny amount of money compared to what's in the stock market. This should only affect GameStop and maybe BlackBerry and Nokia and a couple of firms that started mirroring what was happening here, but not with the same fury. The guarantee and the maths about the short squeeze and what was going to happen when these shorts expires weren't there for those companies. It was trending in that direction. They were heavily shorted, but it wasn't the same as GameStop. But then two things happened. I think the investors started to realize what was happening at this point, and I presume overnight a lot of them got in because when the stock market closed and then reopened the following day, suddenly the amount of money has jumped from $150 up to $300. Wow. $300 per stock. And do you know what? It hung around there for a little bit before plunging and then coming straight back up and then slowly plunging, falling and rising. And yes, it wasn't a stable $300. And immediately the stock market's all over this. Financial investors claiming foul, claiming that Redditors are manipulating the stock market. It's not manipulation. It is providing facts about here's an event. And yes, there's a lot of hype, but no one's pretending to be a financial trader. They're presenting, and they're not just saying investing. Well, they are saying invest in GameStop. There are people out there saying invest in GameStop, but actually, what's happening on Wall Street Bets is just people pointing at how it's still 110% shorted at this point, and saying, when these shorts expire, there's money to be made here. We have faith, and we're holding. We're not selling. Now, normally, if the stock market was driven by greed, and this is what's meant to happen. The stock market is meant to be a place full of greedy people. It's meant to be a casino where people gamble. And they hate us saying it's about where people gamble. But it is people guess where the money will go up and they'll guess where the money will go down. And they put their investment where they believe they'll get a return. And what should happen when a stock goes up to double its value from 100, to be fair, remember, it's gone from 5 to 150, and then it's gone from 150 to 300. What should happen is everyone go, right, I've made my fortune. I can buy that yacht. I can buy that new house. I can pay off my mortgage. I'm going to go home. And it did happen to an extent, but not the way they expected. It held. It held at the end of the day. We're still okay. We're over 275, and it's going up again because more investors are getting in. And this is where suddenly you have stock market analysts screaming about Redditors artificially pumping a stock. But it's not artificial pumping. It's people looking at the maths and saying, we believe there's an infinite potential. It's not. The stock is not worth $300. No one's claiming it is. But what they're claiming is it will briefly. It's not a long-term investment. It should briefly, over next week, rise even further. They said, we are holding. Memes everywhere. Diamond fists. I'm in this for the win. And the anger. People crowing about how much money the hedge fund which had shorted had already lost. You then start getting news stories about how saying, well, they've taken their losses, millions and millions of dollars lost. The hedge fund gets new capital from another hedge fund that comes in, and those shorts expire. They start buying more shorts. There's evidence out there that the company is still shorted. It's still over 100%. What's going on? And maybe there's stuff I don't know behind the scenes here, but this from the outward perspective. This isn't about greed. This is about people who hate. It's not that they hate rich, it's not that they hate wealth, but they have lived through a generation where the banking class has been protected. And suddenly GameStop, a brand a lot of people have a lot of affection for, a brand that was there back in 2010 and that, the millennial generation grew up with, that they bought their video games console from. Suddenly that's the avatar of a chance for revenge, not revenge on the whole banking class, but revenge on one particular git, one individual, one company that overreached itself, that showed that no one's perfect, that showed the downside and how easy it is to get burned. It would have shown, had it happened, and it would have shown to the people on Reddit that yes, Not these people are not invincible. And there was crowing about BlackBerry, Nokia, people crawling into other stocks, which I think was a mistake. But it's because there's a lot of people going, I've got my $300. I put there's people out there who put a lot more money than that. I put $50 in. At this point, I'm looking at $100. Fine, that's brilliant. I could walk away with it. I don't care about the $50 in the first place. I want to see I'm curious what's going to happen. So here's what happens. It's at $300. It goes up and up and up throughout the day, and then it comes down. 350, 375. It's getting very turbulent, and now suddenly you have the new presidential administration look at this and saying they are concerned about market volatility. Because what's happened here is Elon Musk and a few other very rich people have started paying attention, and to us, they like it. They find it interesting. They find it amusing to see a hedge fund manager really expose himself in this way. And I think they like the entrepreneurial spirit that they've seen from people seeing opportunities to make money. But even better, not just the fact that people saw an opportunity to make money, the fact they're holding, because they have faith that they believe when the short is this is not where the real money is. They believe the maths told them the reason they did this in the first place was not for this. It's for what's coming on Friday. And greed dictates that they should have sold, that the stock should have plummeted back down to $20. If this was about the money, it would have done. But the people said no. Well, I say that because it's about the money. Maybe people are saying, well, I can take, if this goes back down, it's fine, because I have the potential for this to be worth double this again. And maybe it is about greed of people holding out, but I honestly don't think it is. I think this is a lot of people on Reddit going, no, I'm not in it for the money anymore. I'm here because I want to see the hedge fund manager go bankrupt. I want to see a moral victory for the small trader. And I think that's really a moral victory for the small trader. And it would be. It's not, it is gambling, but it's honest gambling. It's gambling, not casino, not just going and throwing all the chips on the table. They've done the maths. They've thought about this. They have a rationale. They have a reason. But everywhere on CNBC and the news, they're shouting, these idiots on Reddit, and they start linking people with the alt-right, because there's, to be fair, Reddit's not a nice place. Sometimes there's a lot of swearing, a lot of dank stuff going on. These people do not have nice terminology for what they call each other, but it's less aggressive than what you would hear on Wall Street, I promise you. And don't blame them for this. You can blame them for coming up with this, but it's not that they are manipulating the market. They are being as more honest than anyone else. They're being completely transparent. The people who initiated this are posting daily updates saying exactly when they're in and where they are and that they're holding. So we get to the end of the day, we hit 350, but then it drops. And I'm a bit concerned at this point, but okay, it's because it's got to hold to Friday, and it hasn't. And it comes all the way back down to under, it holds around 300, comes back up again. It's so volatile, and Wall Street hates volatility. Stocks and shares should go up, but they should go up and down incrementally. It's meant to be a long-term investment. This is not about a get-rich-quick stream. But what you've got here is it moving from 300 to 340 in about 20 minutes. A lot of money can be made there by the smart trader. So of course it's volatile. There's people piling into this. The big investment firms are coming in, because they've not seen anything like this. It doesn't happen very often. It's so volatile throughout the rest of the day. And then it comes back down and it ends quite high, actually. So at this point, I'd stopped paying attention last night. The thing, you go to bed and you wake up next day and you're like, okay, where did the stocks end up? So it ended back at 340. It's so volatile. But then we hit Thursday, the day before Friday, the day before this short's due to be squeezed. And wow, we've got another massive jump. We briefly hit over 450. Again, this is unprecedented in the stock market. But what happened here, and this is why a lot of people are so angry, because the volatility just got too much. There's been too much noise and too many people accusing the guys on Reddit of manipulating the stock market. Accusations about they shouldn't have done this. They don't know what they're doing. And there's this belief, I think, in some people in the banking sector that no one who's invested in GameStop knows what they're doing, that they're just piling in on the trend like lemmings, and we have to protect them for their own good because they are going to lose all their money. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. It's a gamble. It's always been a gamble. And to pretend that Wall Street is not about gambling, it might be very safe gambling. It's a gamble. But no, the guys who initiated this, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they did not persuade or bully anyone into following them. They presented their arguments, they presented their evidence, they presented a rational reason for this to happen. But what they started doing on Thursday is traders started locking down the market and actually saying, no, we will no longer accept people buying. The trading platform said, no, you can only sell. We will not, this market is too volatile, we won't let anyone buy it. That is a death rattle to the people who are not committed, to the people who are a little bit uncertain, the people who are nervous, because an investment's an investment. I only put $50 in. The most I'm going to see from this, I could see from this is 200, 300. And I don't even believe I will. But if I walk out and I've still got $20, I'm in this for the experience. I'm in this because I like physical games consoles and I don't want to see GameStop made bankrupt for something they didn't ask for this. This has nothing to do with how good or how well GameStop is trading. This has nothing to do with what the fundamental value of GameStop should be. This is about the manipulation of a very greedy group of people who thought they could profit not just off the fact the company was going bankrupt, but they would hasten its end and drive it to that bankruptcy because they wanted more money even quicker. And when the companies start saying, we believe that the GameStop price, and you start artificially boosting messages out there saying, this is artificial, it's not real, we won't let anyone buy any stocks anymore, and they close trading and reopen it, of course it plummets. Of course it plummets, and it comes back down to 150, and it comes back up, and it's ended at the end of the Thursday back around, it got up to 250 again, and it's plummeted down to under 200 at the end of the day. Market volatility. And I get it. All the people out there warning people, don't believe the hype, don't trust GameStop, be scared, this will bite you, it's volatile. I get it. Yes, it's volatile. I'm behind you, it's volatile. I don't care if it is. There's a lot of people out there who probably do care. They're hoping that this will pay off their mortgage, they're hoping this will pay off their student debt. But I think there's a lot more people out there who have done the maths and actually they're just using this as a moral victory over greed. And to have pumped and shut and damaged that brand, and to accuse people and call all sorts of names, and to say that they don't know what they're doing. It's a rogue Reddit group who are artificially pumping the market and causing all sorts of untold damage. Now, I have seen damage actually, because I've seen on the stock forums and the threads and posts, a lot of people complain that a lot of other stocks and a lot of other businesses are going down. There's people saying, oh, for God's sake, everyone's selling everything else off and buying in GameStop. And if everyone's selling everything else off, all the other stocks are decreasing. So this does go wider than GameStop. I know I've seen a lot of people complaining and moaning, going, the effect this is having on other stocks in the stock market is people disinvest from them and move towards GameStop. Yeah, okay, I get it. That's bad. And I also get the people who are concerned and monitoring the situation. But to be blunt, the guys on Reddit have done nothing wrong. They have pointed out the inherent greed in the system. They have pointed out that the capitalist society that governs Wall Street has fundamental flaws that leave people overexposed. And by the market traders stepping in and saying, we will not allow people to invest in this for their own protection, that is market manipulation. That is the rich people looking out for themselves and saying, no, they haven't said it, but they are saying, they're implying, the hedge funds are too big to fail. And these independent traders who saw a market opportunity are not just gambling. Well, yes, they are gambling, but they're gambling for a reason. They're doing it with faith and they're doing it with rationale about why they're investing where they are. But they're accusing them of being cowboy traders, of endangering everyone else's stocks and disrupting the entire system. Yes, it's volatile. Yes, it's disruption. But for God's sake, stop accusing people who don't know what they're doing. Stop accusing people and name calling and castigating doubt on what they're doing. There's a lot behind this. There's a lot behind that sudden jump. It's a fascinating story. I don't care whether the stocks go up. I don't care whether they go down. But I am shocked and ashamed by the hypocrisy. I shouldn't be shocked and I shouldn't be ashamed. I was there in 2008. We all saw it. and we all know. But for one moment, there was just a chance where you'd have a nice, good news story where a load of people would prove that, hedge funds are not invincible. But it turns out they are, and if you're not a hedge fund manager, sorry, you don't get to make money off rich people's expense. They get to make money off yours.